So tonight's story is going to be about Peter Pan who shook hands with Wendy.
That's on the book.
Once upon a time, while the darling children were with their mummy listening to some stories by the edge of the bed, and mummy was telling them a very interesting story about a giant dragon which was eating up everybody on the planet. So all the children were very captivated. The dog, Nana, noticed something on the window ledge outside. Nana began to growl, grrr, grrr, looking at the window. Eventually, Mrs. Darling looked up from the story and said, "What's the matter, Nana? There's nothing outside there but outside the window except a little bit of snow." But Nana kept going, grrr, grrr, looking at the window. "Oh, you silly dog, it's only snow," said Mrs. Darling. "Yes," said the children, "it's snowing outside. Tomorrow we're going to build a snowman." And Michael and John became very excited, thinking of the snowman they were going to build in the snow when they got up tomorrow. Anyway, Nana decided to carry on with the story about the giant dinosaur and how it was eating everything.
No, a dragon.
Oh, yes, dragon, yes, that's right. And how it was eating everything. And then she told the bit about where a little boy got on the dragon's back and it flew away. Anyway, we'll come back to that story on another day because it's not the story of today. Today's story is about Peter Pan. Now, eventually the time came for the children to go to sleep. So they all got in their beds, all three of them next to each other in different beds. And Mrs. Darling...
There were 3 beds.
There were 3 beds, one for each child.
There was one for Wendy, one for Michael, one for John.
That's right. And Mrs. Darling kissed the 3 children goodnight and left the room. But Nana stayed with the children to look after them. Nana was their guard dog. And Nana continued to look at the window and go, grrr, grrr. "There must be something out there," said Michael. "Why is Nana growling at the window?" So John said, "I'll open the window and see what she's growling at." So John went up to the window and lifted it up and opened it. Just a little bit because it was quite cold outside. But no sooner had he opened it when there was a sudden glittering of light and the falling of green leaves, and something jumped through the window and landed on the floor. "What's that?" said John. "What's that?" said Michael. "Oh my goodness," said Wendy. "What's come in the door window?" And then the little bundle of leaves, which was quite small, started to stand up like a human being. It was a little boy wearing leaves. "Who are you?" said Wendy. "I am Peter Pan," said Peter Pan. "Where did you come from?" said Wendy. "Well," said Peter, "I was on the window ledge listening to your stories from your mummy. I enjoyed them very much, but it is ever so cold out there. So as soon as somebody opened the window, of course, in I popped." "Oh, really? But where do you come from?" asked Wendy. So Peter Pan explained that he comes from the Neverland, a land which contains lots of lost boys, some pirates, some Indians, and
How about you and you never grew up there?
Well, we'll get to that. So, and Wendy said, "What are the lost boys?" And Peter Pan explained the lost boys are all the babies who fell out of their prams in Hyde Park and nobody noticed. And they ended up in Neverland. Wendy was fascinated and she said, "Let me introduce myself. My name is Wendy." And she held out her hand, and to shake hands with Peter Pan. Peter Pan touched her hand with his hand and they held hands for a minute. And then do you know what happened? Wendy's body, she felt so light. It was almost as if she could fly. "Oh, I feel ever so funny," she said, after touching his hand.
There's Michael, John. There's Michael.
Michael?
Yes.
Yes. Then Michael touched Peter Pan's hand. and shaking hands, of course. And Michael felt so light he almost felt like floating away. Last to touch.
It was John.
Well, last to touch hands with Peter Pan and shake hands with Peter Pan was John. Little baby John. He shook hands and shook hands and shook hands and wouldn't let go. But then it was just as well he didn't let go, because as soon as he let go, he floated all the way up to the ceiling like this. Woo! I can fly, said John. And with that, Wendy let go of Peter Pan and she floated up to the ceiling. And then Michael, oh, goodness me, he said, what are we going to do? We can't fly around here all night. We're supposed to be in our beds. Come with me, said Peter. I know a place called Neverland you can go. You'll like it there. And don't worry about how long you spend there. In Neverland, there's no time. Time has stopped. So you can stay there for years and come back the day you left. What do you mean the time stopped? Well...
Then they had to come back.
Yes. So Peter Pan explained what he meant when he said that time in Neverland had stopped. He explained that once upon a time there was only one clock in Neverland, and a big crocodile had swallowed it. And that clock, everywhere he went tick, tock, tick, tock.
But we don't want that.
So because of the clock being swallowed, there was no more time in Neverland, so time had decided to stand still. Well, Wendy, John and Michael begged Peter Pan to take them with him back to Neverland. They really wanted to see it. So finally, Peter Pan agreed that he'd take them to Neverland. So he held hands with all the children and they all floated off the floor and flew out of the window. And off they went to Neverland. When they got to Neverland, they had lots of adventures like fighting with the pirates and being chased by a crocodile. Yes, it was quite fun. But anyway, the wicked Captain Hook, the worst pirate of them all, caught some of the children and put them in a dungeon.
What's a dungeon?
A dungeon is like a deep, dark place under a castle where you put the prisoners.
What's a dungeon?
It's where you put the prisoners, the people who've been bad. So it was very, very dark down there. But Wendy and Michael and John lived a very nice life in Neverland. But as the time went by, they started to miss their mummy and daddy. Sometimes Wendy would tell stories to the Lost Boys about mummies and daddies and how mummies and daddies loved them very much and were probably leaving the window open, hoping they would come back one day. The children liked that sort of story, but Peter Pan didn't. He was worried his friends would all fly away back to where they came from. So they had lots of adventures in Neverland. Finally, after many weeks of adventures, they decided it was time to go back to their home. And Wendy and...
Michael?
Yeah, what's the other one's name?
Michael.
Yeah, Wendy, Michael and John, they all flew back to their home. And do you know what? When they got there, the window was still open just the way they'd left it. In they went, and then their mother came rushing in from downstairs. You're alive, hooray, hooray, I love you. And the mother smothered the children kisses and baked them a lovely cake of chocolate. And that, my little boy, is the end of the story.
Wow, they should have the corn, but they didn't eat chocolate cake.
Well, I'm afraid they did.
Why?
Because they liked chocolate cake and they didn't want to leave any chocolate cake for the mice. The end.